Humanity Matters.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Legacy Chronicles. My name is Zachary Graulich and I'm the Assistant Director of Education here at HMTC. And today I'm joined by Herb Friend, who is a second-generation Holocaust survivor and a member of our community here. So thank you so much for being here, Herb.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I would love for you to share with everybody who's listening right now a little bit about your parents, where they were from, and briefly how they survived.
Sure. Well, the fact that I'm just sitting here with you is an absolute miracle.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough digits in the universe to calculate the chance of me even being here.
Mm-hmm.
1939, the Nazis invaded Poland. My mother, her mother, my grandma, and her entire family living in a small Polish town, Rubieszów. The Nazis came in one morning. The night before, they were under the control of the Russians. The Russians left, Nazis came in, and life changed, forever. First thing that they did was round up all the men in the village because they posed the greatest threat. From the age of 16 to 90, were taken on a death march. Several days into the death march, my grandfather, my grandmother's husband, and her two brothers were on the death march, and they realized they would not survive. If you wanted something to drink, something to eat, they shoot you. You lay down, you sit down. They shoot you in the middle of the night. They jumped into the Bug River, which was a long river running through eastern, north to southeastern Poland. And it was in the winter, the river was half frozen. They swam to the Russian side, and they made it. They were sent to a labor camp in Siberia to cut trees.
Mm-hmm.
My mother and grandmother ended up in the ghetto. My mother saw her 7-year-old brother shot by a Gestapo officer. They were transferred to several labor camps, 7 labor camps in total. The third camp was Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, my grandmother was sent by Dr. Mengele to the gas chamber, my mother to work, and she had seen her family disappear. She knew she wouldn't survive without her mother, so when Dr. Mengele turned around and started heading towards a transport of new victims arriving, she ran behind him, pulled her mother, my grandma, off the gas chamber line and pulled her on and hid her behind the women on the work line. They survived Auschwitz. They shoveled snow in pajamas during the winter, then were sent to another labor camp. And then towards the end of the war, my mother and grandmother were sent to Theresienstadt to be killed the following morning. In eastern Poland, there was a young teenage boy who somehow word had spread what was going on with the Nazi invasion. He loaded up his family on 2 horse-drawn wagons and took them to Russia. Upon arriving there, he was inducted into the army, given a choice to go to the front to fight or go to officer training school. How long is officer training school? Well, between 1 year and 2, sign me up. Yeah. He was in Siberia and training to become a tank commander, and he heard that there were Polish Jews in the local labor camp. He went to visit them, he met them, he gave the camp commandant some money, some soap, some gasoline, things that were tough to get during the war, and he told him, you take care of these men, I'll be back. His tank brigade was on the forefront of the Russian invasion of Eastern Europe. The first city that they liberated, that the Russian army liberated, was Lublin. He asked the residents of Lublin, where did they send the Jews? He said, well, they're in a camp southeast of the town. The following morning, he drove his tanks through the gates of Majdanek, found the remaining starving, pretty much dead prisoners who the Nazis had left behind. One of them came over to him and said, can I give you something? I said, of course, anything. I thought maybe he had some gold, diamond, something of value that he hid. What he handed him was a Yom Kippur machzor with the words, if there are any Jews left in the world, maybe they can use this machzor to pray on the high holidays. He swore to him he would take it with him wherever he would go, and that Jews would read from it. 5 years before he passed, he gave it to me and told me how he came to possess it. He didn't tell me what to do with it. He didn't have to. And we read from it every Yom Kippur at our temple in Rockville Center. So towards the end of the war, the Russian army had developed the ability to intercept Nazi army messages. And he intercepted a message that 128 Jewish women were being sent to Theresienstadt to be killed the following morning. He told General Zhukov that it's not going to happen. I'm going to take the camp tonight. They were stationed in Czechoslovakia. They were about 10 kilometers from Theresienstadt. That night, he drove his tanks through the gates of Theresienstadt. Somehow, it was a small city. Somehow, he managed to find the women in the basement of one of the buildings behind steel doors. He blew off the locks on the doors and asked them in Yiddish, is anyone here from Poland? And if you speak Yiddish, please come forward. So this older woman and her daughter came forward. I said, where are you from? We're from Poland. We're from Rubieszów. It's a town not far from my town. He says, what happened to your family? He says, well, unfortunately, my 7-year-old son was killed in front of us. My daughter saved my life in Auschwitz. She pulled me off the gas chamber lines. We were in labor camps, and we were sent here to be killed tomorrow morning. And she had told her daughter the night before, I'm sorry, we've been through a lot, but we're going to die here in the morning. So he asked her, what is your name? And what happened to the rest of your family? He said, my husband and my brothers were taken on a death march by the Nazis. And what is your name? Zilberblech. So he could barely speak. He looked at her and said, Mrs. Zilberblech, your husband and your brothers are alive. They're in a labor camp in Siberia. He called his father in Russia, sent him to the labor camp. Men were released. They somehow smuggled themselves across Soviet Union, the East Bloc, and were reunited in Germany. Upon arrival, the young officer went over to Mr. Zilberblech and said, can I ask you a question? He says, of course, you saved my family. Can I marry your daughter? They were married 2 years later. They came to America 2 years after that. I was born 2.5 years after that. My sister was born, and here we are today. So it's quite a remarkable story.
I think it goes without saying that that is just one of the most incredible stories of survival that I've personally ever heard. I think that anybody who's listening to this right now has ever heard. It's extremely moving, as you said, the chances, the likelihood of all of that coming together. I mean, it's one of those stories and moments that really makes you feel that it was just meant to be. It just worked out in that way. Bashirt, absolutely. So, getting to you, I would love to know, growing up in a household being raised by such incredible individuals, did you always know that you were the child of Holocaust survivors, or do you remember a time when you found out?
We knew nothing. My parents and grandparents did not want us to grow up in a world of hate and negativity, suffering. We knew nothing, my sister and I. My dad would wake up screaming sometimes in the middle of the night. My mother would just tell us, don't mind him, he's a little cuckoo.
Yeah.
Almost 50 years went by. And then they would meet with other Holocaust surviving friends. And we would hear some stories that didn't mean anything. They were just out of context. And then I took my mother to a witness project program, and she saw the students telling the story of the survivors, and there was, there were videos and slides in front of her depicting what had happened. And at the end of the program, she said, I have to tell my story. So she became a part of the Witness Project, and she became more involved. She did a Names Not Numbers film out at the Suffolk Y, and she spoke to several schools, and age started creeping up, started becoming a little difficult for her. And I started experiencing, the more I learned, started experiencing, second generational trauma, sleepless nights, nightmares, everything that comes along with it.
Yeah. So going a large portion of your life really not knowing any of the details or really anything at all in regards to all this, what was that like for you to just kind of have this world opened up in front of you that I'm sure you never even imagined or thought would be related to your family?
It was a little frightening, because we also have a large family in Israel. We learned about their history as well, got to know them. And I started becoming more involved in Holocaust education. What really triggered it, we got a new rabbi at our temple, and his wife. I was a professor at the Naval Academy now. She did a field study on the effect of Holocaust education on teenage students, and demonstrated statistically that Holocaust education had a significant positive impact on their perception, on anti-Semitism, on bigotry and racism, et cetera. A very positive impact. With that, and learning about my own family story and the importance of education, myself and another member of our temple, we formed the Never Again Committee to support Holocaust education in the local school systems. We started working with the local schools. We raised some funds, and we provided Holocaust books to the local schools, and I got more involved in speaking engagements, working with the Goral JCC, and every other week, even during COVID, we were doing Holocaust presentations over Zoom, and then in-person presentations at the schools. And the impact on the students, very, very noticeable and significant. And what was really gratifying is that even my grandchildren started learned about the family story. And my granddaughter actually gave a presentation to her 6th grade class.
Wow.
And the students were so blown away that we got a call from the teacher inviting myself and my mom to come and speak to the class. Wow. We showed up at the Merrick Public School, expecting to speak to my granddaughter's class. Instead, the vice principal was there and took us into the auditorium, and the entire 6th grade class was there. Wow. And you could see that it seems like the younger the students, the more impacted they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was amazing, all the girls that were there, that attended, came up to my mom, and like every other one said, "I don't know how you did it. I would never have been able to survive." Yeah.
So you've done such incredible work, and obviously we're getting into that 3rd generation. So there's so much to unpack here. So I love getting back to the Never Again committee that you helped form and the work that you've been doing, working with the local school districts. There is something so powerful when it comes to the books and supplies you've been able to supply to these schools. And I'd love for you to share with the listeners what it is that is inserted inside all of those books that is just so powerful.
Yeah, we wanted the book to be special. And a member of our committee contacted the Holocaust Museum in Manhattan and was able to obtain a database that we created of children who were murdered during the Holocaust. And we designed a label for each book. And on that label is the name of a child who perished, was murdered during the Holocaust, where they were born, how old they were when they died, and where they were killed. So every single book, and we've donated about 1,000 books so far. Every book has had a name in loving memory of a child.
And you've donated so many to us here at HMTC as well for different programs and projects that we're working on. You just brought in a group of books today when you came here for this podcast, and we're so grateful. And it's amazing that you're able to really keep the memory alive for those children who are obviously no longer here. Maybe they don't even have any family members that were able to survive. And I feel that when it comes to Holocaust education, putting those names and dates, places, biographies, any type of information that we can attach to the victims and the survivors is so powerful, because we talk about the 6 million, or the over 6 million, I should say, and the 1.5 million children, but those are just numbers to kids. It's so different when you can put a name and a place, a picture, biography, anything that you can add. It really elevates it, it makes it so personal. And that's why, of course, Holocaust survivor testimony, second generation, third generation testimony, that's why it's so effective, because it adds that personal element. So I'd love to talk about, for you, being a second generation speaker, someone who goes to schools as well as comes here and speaks to student groups on behalf of your family. What was the process like for you to develop that type of presentation? And what has it been for you to do that work, to stand in front of kids that you obviously don't know, talking about something so vulnerable and personal to you?
It was very difficult at the beginning because very emotional. But like anything else, you become resistant to the trauma. And it was very gratifying because quite often we receive thank you notes from the students. And one of the most impactful presentations was actually at the Lawrence Public School, which is primarily Latinos, over 90%. And it was a 4th and 5th grade auditorium. And they couldn't stop asking questions after the presentation, so much so that the principal actually had to prolong the period for almost another half an hour.
Wow.
And the thing that we found is that minorities are more impacted by Holocaust presentations than the average American student, because they've experienced racism and bigotry in their lives. They can relate to it.
Yeah.
And we need friends. These are difficult times with the rise of anti-Semitism. So the positive effect of Holocaust education on these youngsters is lasting and very important, and probably the most gratifying part of the entire endeavor for me.
Absolutely. And it's not, for me, who's someone who works with the students here at the museum on a daily basis, it's not surprising for me to hear you share that you had that reaction from those students, because we work with students of all backgrounds, ethnicities, races, religion, etc. here at the museum, and we see that as well. You see the reactions from the students, we hear the comments, we see what they write on their evaluations, and so you can see the reaction the kids have. And as you said, more often than not, some of the greatest and most significant reactions are from students that in one way or another have faced discrimination themselves, or they can just relate in some way. And Long Island has a growing immigrant population, especially with young kids being the children of immigrants, and they can relate to someone like you who grew up the child of immigrants, and you're dealing with your own trauma from that, as are many of these kids, dealing with whatever it is that comes with their parents being immigrants from wherever country they're coming from. So we see that obvious connection, and it's so gratifying for us as well as for you to see the difference in real time. When you see their reaction, when you hear their questions, I mean, I'm sure for you it's just mind-blowing and an experience that I'm sure you don't take for granted.
One of the most incredible experiences was my grandson, junior high school, had a project with Holocaust studies. He had the option of watching a movie, reading a book, or interviewing a survivor. So he came over and sat with his great-grandma. I told him, maybe you should record this. He says, no, I remember it. I'll remember everything. He's very, very smart. And they sat for over an hour, and his great-grandma told him her story. And afterwards, he was completely blown away. He says, Pop, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I should have recorded this.
Yeah.
And when he left, my mother looked at me and she said, when I was in Auschwitz, I could never have dreamed that someday I could sit with my great-grandson and tell my story.
Yeah. And how powerful is that? That's everything. That is really everything. And it's wonderful to see it carrying forward to the future generations as well. Because I feel like when it comes to survivor testimony, we're always thinking of the future. And we're always thinking ahead. And we want to make sure that the torch is being carried forward. And that's what you're doing, and that's what your family is doing. And so you've already mentioned it briefly that the third generation and now the fourth generation has their own interest in the history and the stories. And that in itself is precious, because not every family has that. Not every family has those future generations, and not every family has that interest or the ability. Sometimes it's too traumatizing for 2Gs or 3Gs or 4Gs to be able to speak about. This is difficult family history. So what is it like for you to see that third generation and now that fourth generation being interested and willing to take this on? I'm sure for you that is just so heartwarming, knowing that you're not alone in this in your family.
I consider those dividends, from the effort and the time that we've spent together and how lucky they were. My sons had great-grandparents well into their teenage years. And those memories will always be with them. And even their great-grandchildren. It's not just one person's story, it's the legacy that you leave behind. And their story and their love and their passion now has been spread over 4 generations and multiple children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, which to us is an absolute blessing.
Absolutely. That's the entire purpose of what we're talking about, why we're here. The series is called Legacy Chronicles because we're trying to chronicle the legacy. The legacy and the lessons of the Holocaust, and your family is a prime example of how to do that, what needs to be done, you forming your own committee, the next generation, bringing it into the classroom on their own. Everything that you and your family is doing, the fourth generation going out of their way to interview. He could have just watched a movie, he could have just read a book, but instead he took the time, which for a kid at that age is a big deal, to go and sit with someone of a certain age for over an hour interviewing them. That's a big commitment.
Absolutely.
And so I feel, really I just commend you and your family for taking these steps and doing what I feel all of us in the Holocaust education world want to see happen. And not every family has that ability. Not every family just is able to sit down with someone at this point in 2025 who lived through it. And so needless to say, your family is very lucky and grateful to have these opportunities. And we're even more lucky and grateful to have you and your family in our community here. So I really am appreciative of you doing all this.
It's a blessing for us. And it's important that we become involved with HMTC and being able to affect the students. And it's critically important that their stories be retold till the end of time.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, as Holocaust survivors age and we're losing more and more of them, it becomes our truly a holy responsibility to make sure that those stories are never forgotten from generation to generation. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Absolutely. I really couldn't have put it better myself, that the holy responsibility, as you said. I think that's what it's all about. It's not a burden. It is really a privilege to have that responsibility. So thank you so much, Herb, for everything you do for us, everything you're doing for the communities here on Long Island, the rest of your family, and of course, thank you for being here with us today To all of our listeners, thank you so much as always. You can find more of our episodes at hmtcli.org.